Now, from CBS 4 News, this is Facing South Florida with Jim DeFede.
Good morning and welcome back to this special one-hour edition of Facing South Florida. For the next few weeks, we will be on from 8 to 9 a.m. Later in the show, we will examine a constitutional amendment that could open up the state's primary system and allow even independent voters to participate in the primary process. This is the most important amendment on the ballot this year, so you will want to stay tuned for that. Now, this morning, I had hoped to bring you a debate in a crucial state Senate contest, the race to replace Republican State Senator Ana Terry Flores in Senate District 39, which includes the Florida Keys and a large swath of South Dade. Flores is term limited out, and the open seat in this swing district pits State Representative Javier Fernandez, a Democrat, against Republican State Representative Ana Maria Rodriguez. Both are seen as rising stars in their parties, and this race is likely to be the costliest in state history, with $12 to $14 million being spent by the candidates, the parties, and other outside groups. Several weeks ago, I spoke to both Rodriguez and Fernandez, and they agreed to debate. This would have been their only televised debate. But after initially agreeing, it became impossible to reach Rodriguez or her campaign team to settle on a date. Since we would pre-tape the debate via Zoom, they could do it any day this week and literally from any location. I told them I'd like to do it for the week leading into today's show, and when they did respond, they said they would get back to me. In the end, they never did. When I let them know that I was going to go ahead and have Javier Fernandez on anyway, they complained I wasn't being fair. Here is the last exchange I had with Ana Maria Rodriguez's campaign consultant. I wrote, "If you want to resolve this, you should call me." He replied, "I will when I get off the conference call I'm on." That was September 30th, and I'm still waiting for that call. It's a shame. Ana Terry Flores was a frequent guest on this show, and I believe her constituents would have enjoyed seeing the two people vying to replace her come on and discuss the issues. But here instead is just Javier Fernandez. I started by asking him the same question I ask almost all candidates. Why are they running?
I'm a Miami native and grew up in this district, and I've got two young kids. I'm a proud father of my daughter, Susanna, my son, Lucas, and I've been practicing for the last 10 years and just watched that a lot of critical issues have just not been advanced. I remember riding Metro Rail at the age of 7, and I'm now 45 years of age, and we really made no substantial progress in addressing our mass transit crisis here. But more importantly for me, the existential threat of climate change and what it could do to our local economy, and the option for my kids to come back here, hopefully when they go away to college, and build a life like I have is really what prompted me to run 2 years ago for the Florida House.
You made as one of your issues the fact that your opponent, Ana Maria Rodriguez, voted for a measure to arm teachers. As you well know, the bill doesn't require every teacher to be armed, only those that are willing and go through the training. If a measure like that could potentially stop an incident like the one that we saw, the mass shooting in Parkland, why is that such a bad thing? If teachers come forward and are willing to do it and go through the training, why is that so bad?
Because it belies the facts, data, and evidence, right? It's security on the cheap. It's what I call security theater, really, because the state has no commitment to doing anything real to improve social. Number one, on the House floor, we highlighted the fact that the FBI has done a longitudinal study on every mass shooter incident since Columbine. And in 50% of all of those engaged with an active shooter, an officer is injured, and in 25% an officer is killed. And so we're expecting our teachers to have better results than our trained law enforcement when they're engaging an active shooter. I don't think it's realistic. I don't think it's practical. I don't think the bill addresses the shortcomings in training vis-a-vis law enforcement. And I think another factor is very important. When we introduce guns into the classroom, beyond the unintended consequences of a student maybe accessing a firearm in an incident with a teacher, there's also the possibility when law enforcement is responding to an active shooter situation, they could confuse a teacher for a perpetrator. And I think that also interjects another variable which is not helpful in those situations. So that's for those reasons I was opposed. I just don't think it provides any real measurable benefit. It certainly makes us feel good. It certainly makes for a nice talking point on security, but in terms of real results, I don't think it's the answer.
Well, let's stay with schools for a second. You know, this is another area of divergence between you and your opponent. She's made a point of the fact that she supports charter schools and vouchers, and notes that you send your children to private school. Why shouldn't parents who don't have the same economic opportunity that you are able to provide your children, why shouldn't they be able to take some of those state dollars and to give their children the best opportunity, the best chance for an education by maybe going to a private school?
Well, first, on the personal choice, I think it's interesting because Representative Rodriguez and I actually attended the same parochial school together. So her parents made the same choice that I made. So by extension, she's criticizing their choice as well. Secondly, the choice my wife and I make to send our kids to school in large part for a religious formation is funded with our own dollars. We're not asking anyone else to pick up that tab. It's a substantial sacrifice for myself. It was a substantial for my parents. I understand the difficulties in everyone achieving that option. But what she has proposed, what she has supported, and what I am opposed to is not choice per se. It's choice with zero accountability. And that's what we have here in Florida. We have a voucher program that has no academic standards that need to be met. Short of basically financial larceny, you're not going to get kicked out of the program. There are no accountability measures in place. The proponents on the House floor this year acknowledged that they were not interested in even contemplating them. And the facts speak to the fact that minority children, particularly African-American and Hispanic children, do best in our public schools, which serves 90% of our students. And I'm not willing to write charter schools or parochial schools or private schools a blank check when it comes to accountability around how we spend public money.
Let's talk about the pandemic for a second. You've been critical of the way the governor has handled the issue. What do you think the result of Governor DeSantis's actions have had on what would be Senate District 39, both the Florida Keys and South Dade?
Look, I think the governor had a very difficult task. I don't envy the job he had to discharge over the last 6 months. Certainly, you know, I have been rooting for him as much as we have been criticizing him, I think rightly in many cases. We try to work cooperatively with his office. I think really his biggest fault has been a failure to acknowledge problems or anticipate problems. Why do I say that? It took him 15 days to acknowledge that we had a problem with our unemployment system. When people needed answers about what was happening, he wasn't even willing to address the question squarely. And I think that's been emblematic of his leadership throughout this crisis. We've put a very rosy spin on everything, but we really have not acknowledged the fundamental problems that we have to grapple with. Frankly, I think his leadership is going to cast a pall over our economy and this recovery for many months to come, because we missed a huge opportunity when we declared victory in early May to kind of put Florida on a footing where it was seen internationally and nationally as a location that was safe to travel to. And as you know, Jim, our economy is very heavily reliant on the 100 million visitors that come through Orlando and Miami every year to visit us in terms of driving state revenues, in terms of driving our local economies. That is all put in question because of the leadership of this governor. You know, I have been a proponent of going back to special session, not just to fix our broken unemployment system, to give Floridians the predictability they deserve around benefits, but also because we need to modernize that system.
One of the things that we're seeing play out on the national level is with the president pushing to get his latest Supreme Court pick on the court. Roe versus Wade is more challenged than ever. And you could see a situation where Roe versus Wade is overturned and a woman's right to choose is then for challenge, and goes back to the state level where states would individually decide. I noted that recently your opponent said that she believes life begins at conception and would oppose abortion in all cases except for rape and incest. Where do you stand on it, and what do you think Florida should do?
Look, I have my own personal beliefs. I'm a practicing Catholic, but I have to acknowledge and respect the law, and I have in all my time in the chamber. And we fought very hard against an unconstitutional parental consent bill that was passed. Floridians have spoken on these issues very loudly. We've got a right to privacy that's enshrined in our Constitution, reaffirmed in 2011 by voters who said that this legislature could only limit abortion restrictions in the area of parental notification. We went a step beyond that this past session. So if we want to do anything to restrict a woman's right to choose here as a legislature in Florida, we need to take it back to the people for a constitutional referendum. That's my position, was my position on the floor this year, and that's what I'll stand by going forward.
One of the things I see in one of her campaign flyers that, and I'm just going to read something that she writes about you. My opponent, Javier Fernandez, openly supports the defund the police movement, which clearly demonstrates that he cannot be counted on to help keep our communities safe. Do you support defunding the police?
Jim, I have to laugh because it's a ridiculous assertion. Number one, it's important for your viewers to know that I'm actually endorsed by a police union. The Fraternal Order of Police honored me with their support this year. The PBA in the past has supported me as well. Unfortunately, this election, they decided to endorse my opponent. But the curious thing is two things. My opponent spent 8 years serving on a city council and 2 years in the legislature. You think she would know that we do not say any grace over municipal police budgets? And more curious than that, more disappointing than her lies about my position, because I do not support defunding the police, is her own record, where she has on multiple occasions reduced police funding for in the Doral City budget by the tune of $4 million, reducing sworn officer position in 2015 and 2017 most recently. And in both succeeding years, 2016, crime in Doral went up 7.5%. And in 2017, it went up another 1.5%. So I think she's got a lot of questions to answer with respect to her record on defunding the police.
But I just want to be clear, the notion of defunding the police, that is not something you support.
I do not. And again, like I said, I'm endorsed by the FOP, and I doubt that they would support a candidate who supports defunding the police.
In case you're just joining us, we had hoped to have Fernandez's opponent, Ana Maria Rodriguez, on to debate him, but unfortunately, they couldn't make it work. A final note about debates: next week, we will have what is likely to be the last debate between the two candidates for Miami-Dade County Mayor, Daniela Levine Cava and Esteban Bovo. And in 2 weeks, we will spotlight the congressional race for District 27, when incumbent Donna Shalala faces off with Maria Elvira Salazar on this show. Both debates should be lively. We'll be right back.